In this class, we have learned about the issue of mass incarceration and the growing reliance on penal institutions in the United States. This project will explore prison abolition and its significance in the struggle towards Black liberation. Since the 1980s, the incarceration rate has increased by more than 400%. This prison boom is not a result of increasing crime rates, but as Hammer summarizes, the result of many social forces, including changing state spending priorities since the early 1980s, favoring punishment and militarism over social spending and safety nets, i.e., mandatory minimum sentences for drug offenses, vigorous economic development in some places at the expense of growing poverty in others, the disproportionate political influence of corporate interests, and mass consent born on a national history of racist violence. It is not difficult to spot the faults in the current criminal justice system. Many Americans agree that prison reform must take place at some level. On the other hand, prison abolition is a political analysis and praxis that advocates against the cruelty of incarceration as a practice and seeks to dismantle the prison industrial complex as a whole. Prison abolitionists stress the inhumanity of incarceration as a mode of pursuing justice and argue that prisons exacerbate societal harm rather than solving them. We have been socialized into believing that penal institutions keep communities safe from harm doers and often use the prison as a solution to social problems. However, incarceration has not proven to have significant rehabilitative effects or to be a productive use of resources. Prison abolitionists argue that alternatives to incarceration, such as transformative and restorative justice, are more appropriate and effective solutions to criminal offenses.
Restorative justice practices have been used to address low-level infractions like vandalism, up to addressing the impact of murders on the surviving family members. Restorative justice processes are first and foremost about meeting the needs of people who are hurt. Sometimes the person who can make the greatest contribution to a survivor's healing is the person who harmed them. To come through trauma, we need answers to our questions. To say, my life was never the same after you hurt me like that. Crime survivors want the most safety possibly available. So if incarceration actually produced safety, we would have the safest country in human history. That's not what we have. The core drivers of violence are shame, isolation, an inability to meet one's economic needs, and exposure to violence. And we bake those into prisons to try and keep people from committing further violence. Incarceration exposes people to exactly the things that increase the likelihood that they'll go on to harm others. People who are hurt deserve a process that will help them heal. People who are responsible for crime have an obligation to be accountable for that. All of us deserve responses to crime that actually make us safer.
Restorative justice is a model that has been in oppressed communities as a means of pursuing justice outside of the system that is responsible for damaging these communities. In Our Prisons Obsolete, Angela Davis states that because of the persistent power of racism, criminals and evildoers are, in the collective imagination, fantasized as people of color. The prison therefore functions ideologically as an abstract site into which undesirables are deposited, relieving us of the responsibility of thinking about the real issues afflicting those communities from which prisoners are drawn in such disproportionate numbers. In the 1970s, political prisoners such as Angela Davis and Assata Shakur, alongside radical activists, began to shape anti-prison politics that explicitly called for the dismantling of the prisons. Black radical movements of the past and present have incorporated prison abolition politics as the prisons serve a unique role in sustaining the oppression and exploitation of Black people. Prison abolition is significant to the Black liberation struggle because it demands the transformation of society and an end to racist and capitalist inequality.